Hey, everybody. This is Mike Patterson from EIC Agency. This is the Click and Mortar podcast. I'm here with my partner, Dustin Trout. Dustin, say hi.
How's it going, everyone?
Good to see everybody. This is our inaugural version of the Click and Mortar podcast. So we're just kicking this off. Our goal really is to bring the retailer and brick and mortar stores to the forefront. We want to give retailers the stage. Dustin and I run a boutique advertising agency, and one of our passions is helping brick and mortar businesses. We've gotten tons of people coming to us over the years to try to help brick and mortar businesses from an agency perspective. So what we did is we actually built a product. We built an ad product for brick and mortar businesses, and we want to give brick and mortar businesses a platform for talking about their issues, what successes they've had, where their problems have been. It's a little bit of like how I built this, but for click and mortar or brick and mortar businesses. We're excited. Dustin and I are going to kick off this inaugural version, just the two of us, and talk about a couple things that are related to brick and mortar businesses that we're doing on the technology side. And then we're going to have guests on. We're going to have actual owners of brick and mortar businesses come in, talk about their issues, their successes, their problems, their hardships, and where they've really been able to succeed to share with you all. So you can learn from their trials and tribulations and their successes. So Dustin, I'll kick it over to you. Introduce yourself, say hi, go ahead and give your perspective.
Great overview, and excited to kick this off. Done a bit of podcasting in the past, and it's so fun to learn from others, to give people a platform to tell their story and allow others to learn from that. Excited to really kick this off, and common misconception is that there's brick and mortar and then there's digital, and the two can't live together. And so excited to educate on how the two can live together and work well together, not only on what we're doing, but also through the story of others who have done it and accomplished it. I've been in digital marketing for about 12, 13 years, stumbled into a job, Google, selling Google ads to small business owners, and was able to fall in love with digital marketing, see the impacts it has. And so learned a lot over the years, and I'm a big fan of using digital ads like Facebook ads, Google ads, TV, Hulu, billboards, and create a strategy that moves the meter, moves the needle on businesses, and really how can we help businesses grow profitably. And so want to leverage this as a way to educate and allow other businesses to grow profitably through the education. So excited to do this with you, Mike.
Me too, fired up. And you make a great point about the merging of these worlds of digital and brick and mortar. I think there's a lot of, at least when we see a lot of clients, they're operating in silos and they're thinking about their brick and mortar businesses in one conversation, and they're talking about their digital efforts in another conversation. Some companies even have separate business entities that operate completely in silos, right? And one of your and I's passions is to merge those worlds, to bring those things together, because we really do believe that's the future. There's not church and state here. It's not, hey, here's your digital, here's your brick and mortar efforts. How do we actually bridge the gap between those two things and have them work together and in unison and actually growing the business as a whole rather than in silos and really just a limited mindset thinking about it. You and I are passionate about that. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast and we created the product that we created, because we think there's a huge need there to merge those two worlds. I think COVID really kind of put people in separate camps for a while, and retail's been a little struggling since then. And now the silver lining of that has been, how do we merge those two things together so they work together? So I don't know if you wanted to comment on that at all, but it's a really good point that you brought up, and not having people be in silos, but actually thinking of strategies and ways to bring those two efforts together.
Absolutely. And I think silos is a great way to put it. And look back and look at the conversations that we're having clients on. Should we use TikTok ads or Facebook, or what channel should we use? And I'm a big proponent of people are going to consume content where they want to consume. Let's just follow where our audience is. Same thing follows here, to where Do we need to be brick and mortar? Do we need to be online? I think it could be a hybrid. And how do you integrate the two together to give the consumer a chance to buy how they want to buy? It might be the first time in store, and then that creates the digital experience thereafter. It might be every other time there's online and in store, but it's once you can identify the need of the consumer and ultimately your customer, then you can figure out how much you want to lean into in store versus online. And I think just far too many try to force it on the consumer rather than look at the data and create the path for what the consumer wants. And so, again, hybrid is what I think I'm all about and what we keep preaching.
Absolutely. Great point, and I think great segue into our subject matter for the day. We wanted to talk about geofencing and geotargeting. There's a lot of talk right now. It's a little bit of a buzzword around geofencing and geotargeting. It's certainly a technology that's been around for a long time. It's funny, we kind of laugh about it because everybody wants to know about it now, the hot new thing. And we're like, well, it's been around for 8 to 10 years. So, but it really plays well into what we're talking about here, which is the merging of digital and brick and mortar, if you will, or retail. It allows retailers to use digital to fence and or target folks based on geographic positioning and where they are physically. Dustin, you have a lot more insight into the technology and the advertising implications of the technology. So let's talk about geofencing versus geotargeting and what those differences are, just to lay that out so it's clear. There's probably some misunderstanding about the two and or that they're the same thing, which they're not. Why don't you differentiate for folks between the two?
Absolutely. So one, the geo targeting is essentially when you put a target in a certain area, and we're telling the systems we only want to target people that are in that area when they're in that geo target essentially. So we do it around a zip code or a particular location. Any device that goes in there, that's when we can start the advertising. As soon as they leave, the advertising stops, and that's geo-targeting. Geofencing will use the same fence around a location, only we want to target people once they come in and after they leave. People are a creature of habits, and if we know where people are going, we have more insight into the types of things that they're buying, the type of lifestyle that they live, and these data points allow us to ensure we get the right message in front of the right people. So geo-targeting, we only target people that are in that fence at that specific time. And then geofencing is targeting people after they leave that specific area.
So would you say that geo-targeting is essentially real time and geofencing extends that time barrier? It's not limited by time, essentially.
Absolutely. Another good example, geo-targeting, would be targeting people that are at an event. So we put a fence around an event. We only want ads during that time. And then geofencing is anyone that was there during that time of that event, during these dates or hours. After they leave, then we want to extend that message after.
Some of the other potential iterations of it that we've seen, we talked about, are actually being able to geofence competitors. So if someone else, someone goes into one of your competitors' geofence, that person then becomes an extended target from a retail perspective if you want to retarget or target those people as well, right?
Absolutely. An example there would be, jewelry store. That's a longer sales cycle. People don't make a decision day one. And so if we can identify your competitors in the area, we can then target anyone that went into that address in the last 7 days, 5 days, and start running ads to them. We know that if they've been to 2 or 3, they're probably shopping around, and that's someone that we want to get in front of and say, hey, we're a jewelry store. Come on in and check us out.
Do you feel like there's any advantage of one versus the other, or is it really just depending on the tactic and the strategy and what you're trying to do or what customer you're trying to reach? It's really not like one is better than the other, correct? It's more a tactic and a strategy based approach, and one fits better with a certain tactic or strategy.
Absolutely. I think each one is a tool, and I think what you're trying to build or what you're trying to accomplish, there's a better tool for it. If you're at an event and you have a booth there, geo-targeting and hitting people in real time to get people to your booth, is the better solution. If you can't be there and you want to target people that were at the event, the geofencing is going to be a better approach because you're going to target the right people even after they leave. So I don't think one is better than the other. I think it just needs to align with what you're trying to accomplish, which goes back to who are you trying to target, what are you trying to say to them, and what are you trying to get them to do.
Cool. Let's talk about geofencing versus geotargeting. Let's just talk about geofencing. We do a lot of geofencing with our click and mortar product. That's kind of the foundation of geofencing. We found customers doing various different iterations of that, zip codes, their locations, competitors' locations, that type of thing. Any other pieces you want to elaborate on the geofencing front, or some idiosyncrasies you want to bring into play so when people are thinking about these tactics, they have other data points that you want to talk about?
I think the frequency is the big one, and I think that's the big advantage that brick and mortar retailers have that aren't necessarily leveraging. So like Facebook and Google are typically geo-targeting, and so they'll do a 3 mile radius around your address, and there might be someone that hits it and they're in that address at that time, but they're just passing by and will never come back again. I think the geofencing is where there's a huge opportunity because of the frequency, and I think that's, yes, you can target competitors, you can target they've been in here or in this fence or they've passed by. But again, creatures of habits. We want to find people that are always in that area because the likelihood of them coming in is going to be much higher. And so really looking at the frequency. Do they come by here or in this fence once a month, 3 times a month, 10 times a month? I think hitting into the frequency is a big one to really look at as you're ideating around this strategy.
So frequency, there's frequency on the front end, right? Of how often does this person come within a certain geofence, which is something that the technology takes into account, and or we can set those parameters of that, right? And then there's frequency of ad serving or promotion serving after that, right? I think a lot of people get frustrated with or can get annoyed with getting completely spammily retargeted with ads, mostly online, but also based on geofencing and location as well. What's your point of view on frequency and retargeting windows and that kind of thing, so that people don't get annoyed by a constant retargeted ad or something like that? What's your point of view on, let's call it the post frequency dilemma, if you will?
I love it because frequency is not looked at too often. Everyone wants the big reach numbers. How many people can I reach? And I think the annoying part only comes in when it feels like you're not being heard, and that's basically saying the same thing over and over and over again, which I think that's where people get annoyed, is seeing the same ad 3 or 4 times a day over the course of a month. We're big proponents at really looking at the frequency. We try to push for showing up at least 3 to 4 times a day, but we're changing the message the further away you get from interacting with us. So you engage with the brand. We might be very promotion heavy within the first 2 to 3 days and changing the types of promotion. So there's a lot of different ads that are being seen. They're all around the same concept, which is promotion. Now, as they get to day 4 through 10, we might be more check out the reviews, see how other people are using it. And within there might be 7 to 10 different messages. So we are hitting people 3 to 4 times a day, but the message is changing every single iteration. And the further they get away from engaging with the brand, it's getting less salesy and more, how can we add value by using this product or service in your everyday life? And so it is something that most people are only showing up once every 7 days to people, and why the ROI or return typically isn't as great on retargeting efforts is because they're trying to reach too many people too little times rather than focusing on a smaller set of audience and increasing the frequency and really hyper focusing on different iterations of what's being said.
And does the technology allow for we talked about on the front end, if you're in this area 2-3 times, you become a more, that frequency puts us in the pool, right? Does the opposite exist on the back end? If somebody leaves the area or they're no longer in that area, I'll give you an example. I was down in Southern California for Christmas, and my fiance and I stopped into this hotel, a nice hotel, checking it out, etc. We leave, and I come back to San Francisco, and I'm on my local weather app, and I keep getting retargeted for that hotel up here. I keep getting retargeted for that hotel in the weather app, and I'm not even in that area anymore. And there's just no way I'm going down there in the next couple months. So it's annoying. It's at the point where it's annoying, right? So basically, is there anti-frequency on the back end so that that doesn't happen?
Yes, I love this, and that's it goes back to the conversation. You're annoyed because the conversation's irrelevant. They're not using the right data in their targeting. And this is where, going back to hybrid, we can take geofencing and geotargeting and say they might have been in this area, but let's only serve ads if they're still in this area. As soon as they get 100 miles out or a few states out, then let's stop serving the ad. You can take it a step further and say, if they've left this area, then let's change our messaging to say, hey, we look forward to your next stay, or the next time you're back, choose us. This is where, in my opinion, is the difference between agencies or people that are tinkering on the back end are going the extra mile to define these audiences and set these up. But you can certainly do that within all these platforms. It's just a matter of getting in and setting up the parameters of these look back windows and when to serve ads. And that's kind of where we shine. We take that extra step, but it can absolutely be done.
Awesome. So, in summary, we have geo-targeting versus geofencing. There's a decision that needs to be made there and considerations for that, geo-targeting, geofencing. There's front end frequency setting, and there's back end frequency setting. And then there's basically readjusting the audience pools based on those frequencies, both on the front end and on the back end. Are there any other considerations that you would want to bring up when people are thinking about this subject matter, when they're thinking about how they can employ geofencing or geo-targeting, other than frequency and then back-end audience building?
No, I mean that's a lot to chew on. I think once you have that down and you know that you're targeting the right person who you want to get your message in front of, the next big key thing is what are you saying to them? So really, now that you have your audience defined, I think taking a step back and go, well, someone's been here last week compared to 2 months ago. Is there a different message we want to say to them? Far too many times it's all this audience segmentation is great, but if you're not saying a different message, you're not yielding the best results. So I guess really thinking not only who these people are and why you're separating the timeframes and everything, but how are you going to message them a little bit differently that's more personalized and doesn't annoy them.
Yeah. All right. Well, you already are uncovering the subject matter for the next podcast. So we can talk about audience segmentation and message segmentation and creative segmentation based on those audiences, where people are, where they are in the sales cycle, are they top of funnel, middle, etc. So good setup. You're a baseball player, so you pitch that pitch the next podcast. We can make that note and get into that next time. But for now, that's it. Geofencing, geotargeting, and all of the idiosyncrasies and ups and downs and ins and outs of that. Hopefully, we've covered that, and this is helpful for people.
Absolutely. And make sure to subscribe. There's going to be plenty more of this, a lot more tips, tricks, and content to ultimately help you grow and scale your business.
Cool. Follow along with us. We got a lot more to come, including folks who are doing this in the real world and their ups and downs, ins and outs, successes and failures. I read something a while ago that you learn a lot more from failure than you do from success. So we'll be bringing some of that in here as well. So thanks for tracking along, and we look forward to more.